All right. So something that has come up recently in Bree Folt's work. Boy, The Mothers is a very good book. I'm at beyond 200 pages in, and hell of a book. So this was actually kind of interesting as he got into the idea what really that most early societies base fundamentally the idea around matrilocal relations. So the idea is that the male will end up going to the female's household and becoming a worker in that household to earn her, and that this was very normal for almost all of human society up until extremely recently. One of the most important ways that this was demonstrated is so in most societies, there's whole sections of the planet that never had cattle. And I know there's probably a lot of people will be like, what? And it's like, yeah, there was no cattle in the New World. So there's a reason why the very idea that you would be a male who would own cattle and that you would fundamentally then buy your bride with cattle. So this is very normal to most of Africa, most of the African continent. The idea that you would have to have goats and sheep that or other animals that you essentially have to give as a gift to the bride's family. Now, one of the key things though is that one, this is so common that fundamentally you're not considered, it's considered that you have not properly married the female until you give a substantial gift to the family. The more sort of the less people have. So societies that they don't even have cattle, like they're not even pastoral. Most of the time these are societies that they don't really have private property. And it's because you don't have anything that's really a true store of wealth and that can accrue more wealth, that it can accrue greater value. And cattle can accrue greater value as time goes on. If you breed them correctly, cattle then become even more and more and more valuable. And so this was the point that he ended up starting to make, was that he was basically getting into that even until like recently in Britain, that in Britain you could actually find real marriage law that gets into a man not properly paying, and so he therefore could not have he could not claim the children as his own. And this is in Britain in like the 18 or 1600s, something like that, because he didn't pay the price for the bride. And so this was that common to that this existed until very, very recently, even in Europe. And so one of the things that really the whole thing about the whole like red pill thing and people just shitting on the feminists and stuff was, remember, a big part of this is it's a fundamental part of women's nature that you have to pay to play. And they were saying, no, this is about the depths of personality and love, and you don't understand, and yada, yada, yada. And you don't understand the how people really, you're this kind of man or that kind of man. But now, I just want to make sure everybody understands, like, oh, no, we had it not only correct, but we had it so correct that actually Bree Folt, being one of the early kind of socialists who altered what we think of as normal for anthropology really kind of shows like no, this has always been a universal. There's never been a time where you don't pay unless it comes down to a society that nobody owns shit. Then the gifts that are given are different. They have to be valuable, but they're not what we would think of as valuable. So like the idea of like wampum, that kind of stuff, like this really does describe Native American societies, and Native Americans fundamentally did not have something to that you could they didn't have the ideas of private property in the same way we do. So even the very concept that you have property rights over the sexual access to your wife is entirely a a thing from Western Europe. That that this only starts to apply in societies that have extremely advanced market economics. Usually they have come to the point of empire. And one of them, the big ones, was that capturing wives is usually a ritual. It's not a real thing. There really aren't people who capture wives. And if they did, he gets into why this is something that even the Greeks, the ancient Hebrews and the ancient Greeks, actually countenance people against, to go and raid and try to raid and get a wife, or is because then it makes all insults to a lady's honor a cause for war. Anybody breaks the ritual, the way that things go for coupling and all that, you end up giving it this potential for there to be warfare between groups. And I was like, it was interesting because he's done this a number of times where he'll get into something, and then I had to think about it, and I thought it through, and I'm like, oh, okay, yes. And of course, it's that moment where you realize, like, damn, people were a bit more bright back then. But that's why he writes so well, too. But it was just something I wanted to bring up because this was a major claim by sort of this refuting the red pill world. And this guy like really nails, I mean, he really gets into this. He's like, no, there's no exceptions to this one. Oh, there's almost no such thing as a society where the woman just takes a fancy to a guy and decides to be with him forever. It just doesn't exist. He's just like, no, it's always a business arrangement. And typically you're making the business arrangement with the family. And that typically also, in most societies, the man joins the woman's household, not the other way around. And that if you were to actually take the woman from where she lives, that this is that they ritually have to try to stop you. It's like a ritual. You actually have to try to stop the man from taking away the daughter. And yeah, it's still, yeah, I'm going to be reading this section a bit because it's pretty fascinating shit. Yeah. Boy, work is tough. All right, later.